गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। वणक्कम, गुड इवनिंग, सत श्री अकाल एंड जय हिंद। आज हम बात करने वाले हैं यूथ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट इन चाइना, उसके क्या कॉजेस हैं और उसके क्या कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस हैं। ये सब चीज के बारे में बात करने के लिए मेरे साथ बहुत तीन नौजवान हैं और उनका अध्यापक। So first, let me welcome the entire team from OP Jindal Global University on to Gunner Shot. Good evening, all of you, and welcome to Gunner Shot. Right? Let me first give a overview कि हम ये क्यों कर रहे हैं। ये मेरा तीसरा बार है when I'm having young people on Gunner Shot in a panel. इससे पहले हमने दो बार चाइना सेंटर चेन्नई सेंटर ऑफ चाइना स्टडीज में उनका रिसर्चर्स और उनका रिसर्च ऑफिसर्स के साथ हमने बात किया। अभी वी आर स्टेपिंग आउट ऑफ चाइना, मूव टू नोएडा where the team from OP Jindal Global University is here. And the whole idea is that we should be able to understand China better, a wider reach about China. And it is not only people who have got great experience in China to talk about China. That's a useless thing. We need young people to talk about China. And we need to understand China a lot more because a lot is happening in China. Plus the fact that China is our biggest neighbor, and the fact that we've had a lot of problems with China, and the fact that we share over 3,000 kilometers of a contested border with China. And notwithstanding everything, we are the two great regional powers. So understanding China is important. That's the first part. The second thing, why are we taking this topic of youth unemployment and consequences and causes? अगर आप सबको याद है, कुछ साल पहले हमारे देश के अंदर एक मंडल कमीशन हुआ करता था। जब वो मंडल कमीशन जारी किया गया था, तो लोगों को काफी आक्रोशित हो गए। They were upset. And who are upset most? The people who are upset most are the youth. And the youth feelings put the government down. Mr. VP Singh's government came down because of the problems which came forth in the Mandal Commission. Similarly, अगर आप टाइनैनमैन स्क्वायर का जो इंसिडेंट अगर आप एनालाइज करोगे, तो आपको मिलेगा कि इट वाज द यूथ who came up and stood on Tiananmen Square and faced the tanks. That famous picture of one man facing a tank was a young boy at that point of time, a student. It was the students who shook up China. So why are we talking of youth today in China? Because China is going through a churn. We have seen some of the highest unemployment rates in China ever since I started reading China. Youth unemployment, people who are coming out of college, उनको नौकरी नहीं मिल रहा है। एक नया सिलसिला शुरू हुआ तानपिंग और बाइलान, जिसके बारे में की बात आज बातचीत होगा, और बहुत चीजें हैं। और जो पिछले महीने हमने एक क्रिस्टीना चेन, डॉक्टर क्रिस्टीना चेन फ्रॉम ताइवान, उनसे बात किया। उन्होंने बोला कि देयर इज सम सोशल unrest, but it is not critical. The question is, these things about the youth issues, it doesn't take long to go critical. Right. For this, first and foremost, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sriparna Patak, who is a professor of international relations in the OP Jindal Global University. She's been on our channel earlier. A month back, she did speak about the narrative war with China and the narratives of China. It's so great to have her back on Gunner Shot. Over to you, Dr. Sriparna. Please, these people are your students. These young, bright kids are your students. So just give a run over your view about this subject and give a small thing before we let Sukanya run away with the whole show. And
Thank you
please,
so much.
yeah,
Thank
please
you
go
so
ahead.
much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar, everyone. It's truly wonderful to be back on this great show, and this channel. And sir, you're doing an excellent job of telling people, educating people that चाइना असली में क्या है, हमारे संबंध किस तरह है, क्या challenges हो सकते हैं और क्या opportunities हो सकते हैं. तो because today's topic is something which is youth related, we have three wonderful youngsters from OP Jindal Global University in Sonipat. All three of them, Sukanya, Rakshit, and Shagun, they've had courses on China, and beyond courses also, courses or grades are not the best yardsticks, but they're extremely intelligent and hardworking, and they have worked on various aspects of China. Sukanya is a PhD scholar. Rakshit and Shagun are both pursuing their masters. But besides just being students, they've worked in think tanks, they worked in risk consultancies, they worked in research organizations. They have their varied research interests with regards to China, spanning sociological, political, bilateral, multilateral, etc. Now, because they are the youth, they bring in fresh perspectives. And China में किस तरह के हालात हैं, youth क्या भुगत रही है इस वक्त, there would be no one better to understand than understanding from three youngsters who've been following China very closely. So I will not take up too much time, because it's always better to hear it from the youngsters about an issue which plagues the youngsters. It might not be in our country, it might be in a neighboring country. Nevertheless, the youth always will have better perspective. So I'll hand it over to Sukanya. Sukanya, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, Professor Shipana Pathak and Sir. I'll be talking on socio-economic issues faced among the youth. To start with, I would like to bring highlight to what has been published recently by International Monetary Fund report, which states that in long run, China will be facing two significant concerns. First, of shrinking population, and second, of slowing productivity growth. Presently, China is facing quite a persistent issue, which is the highest youth unemployment. The concerns were raised after the release of report mentioning about the increasing unemployment becoming an economic challenge, where the second highest figure for the urban jobless rate among the age group between 16 to 24 rose up to 21.3%, estimating around 11 million youth as of June 2023. How these how these problems faced by youth affect the economy and the society. Last year, Xi Jinping emphasized calling urban youth to seek employment in rural areas, revitalize the rural economy, which is quite similar to what Mao Zedong has done, where he exiled 10 of millions of urban youths to the outlying region of the country. And after Mao's command in 1960, many young scholars, many young Chinese, even Xi Jinping, went to the rural region. Xi Jinping, along with 20 others, went to Yannan area in 1960. This is a similar proposal to encourage youth to move to Guangdong, which is the wealthiest province for giant manufacturing products, estimating to offer 3 lakh jobs to youth to travel to the rural side to find the employment. But what we see currently is agitation against it, where the party is encouraging young people to strive for work in difficult and remote areas and learn to eat bitterness, a Chinese expression meaning a way to endure hardship. Maybe this is something temporary arrangement which the CCP is trying to put in, but or she is doing what Mao has done to increase the primary knowledge among the youth. But this move is generating an unhealthy environment in the society. What the country is seeing is the idea of lying flat or tang piang, a social phenomena which has taken roots among the young Chinese about the delusion of taking the face of weak economy and absence of good job. Similarly, the idea of buying land, that is, let it rot, conveying a more profound sense of pessimism and not striving. What is happening or the repercussion of the unemployment, I have narrowed down it to 5 points. First one being unemployment hysteria, which economist calls as a biggest problem among the people working. So China's youth unemployment rate has doubled in 4 years, a period of which has been a period of economic vitality in China, and has induced by Beijing's zero COVID measures and has left companies wary of hiring. Secondly, the shift in economic landscape or occupational structure, which has been a challenge for young job seekers, with less employment opportunities available, more low-paying jobs or the informal job settings are opening. According to Stanford University Professor Scott, and I quote, he said that the ratio of informal to formal sectors job 15 years ago was 40 to 60, which is now flipped in China. The third issue being the third issue being of power and economic slowdown, which has increased a trust deficit. For instance, Evergrande, which was facing a financial difficulty and infrastructure programs, leading to a bubble burst in the economy, which has caused to vacant of numerous flats, or creating more and more ghost towns in the country due to the weak consumption, further creating more complexities and disturbance and consumption in the country. During COVID 19, many government policies impacted small businesses and consumer spending. Youth unemployment rate has doubled in last 4 years. And in aftermath, the country is still facing difficulty in reviving domestically, seen in many job markets. And many businesses forced to close or reduce their workforce. A report released by Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, it is a body under China State Council, it stated that last year Alibaba, one of Chinese biggest technological company, has reduced its employee head count by around 11,700, or about 5% of its workforce. The fourth challenge is the gap further has led to major productivity issues in the country. With less number of actively participating youth, what is happening is a downfall trend in overall economic output, and the gap in unemployment is further led to the gap in labor market and development of valuable skills among the youth. The next uh, the next heading will be the challenges which has been faced by the society due to the unemployment trend. First being the demographic imbalance. Around one third of the population, that is around 400 million people, will be turning 60 by 2035, which creates a demographic imbalance, and this is not but a consistent issue in the country due to the government own previous policies like later longer fewer, meaning later marriage, longer birth intervals and fewer births, or one child policy, which has now been changed to three child policy, has impacted the demographic condition in the country. According to the census data, there were 209.78 million Chinese were 65 or older, representing almost 14.80% in 2022 and 200 million in 2021. The issue of youth unemployment will further impact the demographic dynamics in the country. One of the Chinese leading expert, Liang Jiangzhang, suggested that the demographic challenge as a long-term ticking bomb for China. The second challenge is the unconventional choices which the youth is making these days. Is that is with good education, with long working hours and high living cost, and no choice to left, the youth has started living with their parents. As per the report, 1 in 5 Chinese youth are out of work, which has led to the notion of full-time children or paid children, meaning young children who don't have full-time jobs, they opt living with their parents. In case some youths are even quitting their job and have the laid back attitude or lie down travel phenomena, which is now becoming very prominent in China. The third challenge is a major effect on the GDP. According to Goldman Sachs, a young consumer contribute as much of one-fifth of spending in urban areas. Those under 35 accounts of three-fourths of luxury goods and spending. With the impact in the financial condition in China has noticed a downfall in domestic services, and by 2022, around 93.8% of consumers in China were using those domestic services. Lastly, and one of the most important being the health, how less employment has caused the major health problems in the country. The unemployment scenario had led to frustration and disillusionment or social unrest among the youth, which has raised concerns with mental health among the youth, struggles with anxiety, pressure from family, and so on and so forth. What next or forecast, or what we will be seeing ahead, is the problem of unemployment. The data which has been released was of urban unemployment ratio. So China is only making data available for the urban population, with more than 11.6 million expected to graduate, with further push of unemployment rate, and not asking urban population to move to rural will further lead to opacity of data collection on employment in China. with less opportunities and hope, youth might start traveling abroad. And the third problem, which might be that these angry well educated youth could cause problem to the ruling CCP, and CCP has to open up some, or has to bring in new income opportunities along with these policies, so that the priorities should switch back to private sectors, and more employments can be generated in the country. That's all from my end. Thank you so much.
Sukanya brought out very many things. But I think the most important thing which she's brought out is that fact that 20% of the youth are unemployed. 20% of the youth being unemployed, 1 in 5 educated youth being unemployed, is not the best of things to happen. And add to that, ये बात ये भी है कि ये unemployment ही नहीं है. The jobs they are getting don't pay well enough. They're pay cuts. In fact, I read a report which said that all these children are being sent either to the rural area, or they're even going and doing household jobs. अगर हिंदी में बात करो तो आय की नौकरी कर रही है, right? So that's a bad state. So I'll hand you over to Dr. Sriparna. Your little comment, and then we'll shift to Rakshit.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Sukanya, for bringing out a lot of things. I think one of the things which you mentioned कि शी जिनपिंग और माओ जेडुंग किस तरह से सिमिलर हैं, वो जैसे जिस तरह से कह रहे हैं दैट आप जाओ और रूरल एरियाज में नौकरियां करो, दिस इज सिमिलर टू व्हाट माओ जेडुंग हैड सेड. उन्होंने एक डाउन टू द कंट्री साइड मूवमेंट के बारे में ही हैड सेड दैट वेर इन ही सेंट द अर्बन यूथ डाउन टू द कंट्री साइड, जिसके वजह से देयर इज समथिंग इन चाइना कॉल्ड द लॉस्ट जनरेशन, जिनको पढ़ने का मौका नहीं मिला, जिनको अर्बन एरियाज से होके भी अर्बन एरियाज में नौकरी करने का चांस नहीं मिला. सो देयर इज अ ह्यूज लॉस्ट जनरेशन. क्या वो रिपीट हो रहा है? सो आई थिंक ये एक बहुत ही यूनिक पर्सपेक्टिव सुकन्या ने यहाँ लेके आई है. वी कैन रीड अ लॉट अबाउट स्टेटिस्टिक्स, बट ये जो जक्स्टापोजिशन किया है सुकन्या ने, ये बहुत ही यूनिक है. सो थैंक यू फॉर दैट, सुकन्या.